Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Season 7. Oh, sorry. Star Trek The Next Generation Season 7, Episode 15. This is called Lower Decks. Honestly, at this point, this is just like, and all my file names, this is just Star Trek. That's all I call it, because I don't need to differentiate it. Yeah, Deep Space Nine is Deep Space Nine. This is just Star Trek.
Oh, I'd still differentiate it because that would annoy the hell out of me.
It's fine. It continues the lineage. It's the mainline series.
No, that would annoy me so much.
And when I say I literally just mean my file names for recordings and things like that. If I'm like cataloging something, it's getting called its proper name.
Even my file names say TNG, and when we did the original series, they said TOS on my file names.
Oh no, that's psychotic. The original Star Trek you can just call Star Trek.
I could, but I like my file names to be fully just like, yeah, no.
Okay.
System file names are something I really care about.
Apparently. So yeah, spoilers for the episode, everyone. This is the episode where we kind of focus on a bunch of the lower ranking officers, the ensigns, who are kind of, particularly in the plot in this case, they're kind of gunning for a promotion. And I obviously we saw the name. We read the description last time and we immediately went, oh, I guess that's why they named that animated show Lower Decks, because this episode exists. They clearly took inspiration from it. So very curious to get into this to see how this one fared, especially since that last episode we did of this show was absolutely diabolically terrible in every way.
Oh, yeah, it was that one.
It was that one, yes. I know it's been a little while, but it was that one. So
to me, I've already wiped it from my brain.
Yeah. At one point, like the medical ensign in this episode like starts talking to Crusher, and Crusher starts giving her love advice, and I would like, Crusher, don't give anyone romantic advice. Are you insane? Especially right after that.
Yeah. Questionable at the best of times, but right now, oof, no.
Yeah, oof, yeah. So yes, I think what surprised me about this episode is that I think I was expecting to see even less of the main characters. I thought they'd like have a cameo practically, and then we just go completely like the ensigns, and that would be them for most of the episode. Not that I'm disappointed in that, but that's what I think I was expecting.
I was also expecting that, and I kind of would like to, I know there's a whole anime show for that, but I would like to see one episode of that here. I think that would have been nice. But I'm not too mad because it was still a pretty solid episode overall. I
think it was a very good episode. I would go as far as say. I found myself feeling, the hit at the end, the emotional impact at the end, I thought landed quite well, for a couple of different reasons. In particular, I think the way that all four of these ensign characters, I mean, there's kind of a fifth one to an extent, but the fifth one's kind of this like go-between who can talk to both the ensigns and the upper officers, because he's not actually in Starfleet. He's just the bartender at 10 Forward, basically. But the other four all kind of have correlating officers that they talk to in some way, where, like, one's like an engineer, so he works under Geordi, that's the Vulcan. One is security ops, Bajoran, who works under Worf. One works under Riker, and the other one works under Crusher, like we said, the medical one, which I think is the only one that I remember seeing in previous episodes. She's been in a couple of episodes in Medbay. I'm sure.
I'll tell you what,
if she wasn't, there was a very similar young woman in Medbay for a couple of episodes.
I'm not gonna lie, all the background ensigns kind of just blend together. Like, I don't pay enough attention to
that's them. That's fair. I think she had a couple of lines, which is why she's kind of sticking out in my mind. Maybe when they decided to do this episode, they thought, oh hey, we've got one that we've kind of already established. We'll bring her in as one of the four. But I thought this episode was pretty good. I think it looked at a couple different things, really, right? It looked at this idea of how the officers that we always follow and how they're perceived by their, by their lower down officers, like how they look up to them, how they're kind of mad at them, annoyed by them, scared of them, whatever it might be. And kind of like one of the big plot points of the episode, or character beats of the episode, is that one of them, the one that works under Riker, really doesn't think Riker likes him and is always complaining about him, and Riker's quite tough on him, and he feels quite tough on him whenever we see him interact with him. And it's actually Troy who points out when Riker's complaining that You know, I don't really like him. He's always trying to like buddy up to me. Tries like, I'm pretty sure you did that when you were hit. In fact, you know what? You remind me a lot of him. He's a lot like you. I think you're just recognizing too much of yourself in here, and I think you're being a little bit, you know, you're lucky that the officers that you annoyed when you were trying to be too nice let it go because they realized you were young and stupid, and they thought, oh, we'll give him a pass on it because he's got some potential. And Riker kind of having to swallow his pride a little bit and like, yeah, all right, Troy, you know me too well, shut up.
Yeah, Riker's a better man than me. I would still be too annoyed by him.
I think on some level I would be too, to be honest. Yeah. Eagerness is something that ruffles my feathers.
From personal experience at work, when there are newer people, I'm like, just get out of my way, please. Stop trying to talk. I don't care.
Yeah, so I think that stuff's pretty well handled, and that makes up like a good first half of the episode. But there was a good through line where it's like there's something going on, and we see like little snippets of it, and there's kind of this nice little idea that each of the 4 ensigns all see different parts of it, and all have some knowledge, but they're not allowed to share it. Well, actually, I say all of them. One doesn't.
Oh, the one, yeah.
The one guy who doesn't like Riker, he does not. He's, Sam, I think his name is? He doesn't know, and he's really frustrated later on because he can tell that the others all kind of know at least part of the puzzle, and he's like, wait, what's going on? Why isn't anyone talking to me?
That scene where they're all sat there, and there's that realization that everyone knows, kind of to some extent, what's happening, and he's completely in the dark. It's like, come on, guys, tell me about it. And we're like, yeah, we can't really say anything, but they all know what each other knows about it, except him. Yeah,
so it does this nice thing where all of the officers that we know, all the main characters, all get a little bit of development from interacting with their what's the right word here? Inferiors?
Subordinates.
Subordinates, that's the word I'm looking for. Inferiors is more...
I mean, it's correct, but it's quite harsh.
It sounds more derogatory, and I don't mean it to, but yeah, subordinates.
Yeah.
They all kind of get like a moment of growth from that. You know, Riker realizing that he's being too hard on him. Geordi kind of like seemingly, even though he never like vocalizes it, seemingly admitting to himself that, oh, I think I'm kind of getting annoyed because this Vulcan keeps suggesting changes that make sense. But in the same way with Riker, even though it's never said, you can kind of like imagine, I bet you were just like this, Geordi. I bet you were making suggestions of all these little things you could change.
Yeah, but Geordi comes around to it by himself a lot quicker.
Yes.
Like at first, he's just annoyed because he didn't think of it, but then he does go, well, hang on, actually, that does work. Maybe he's onto something.
Yeah, so you've got that. Actually, Crusher's kind of an interesting one because Crusher's just like best friends with her her protege. She's just like, oh,
like, yeah, just go for it. I'm going to promote you. Don't worry about it.
Tell me about your love life. What's going on? I think she just wants to live vicariously through her because her love life's such a shambles. She's like, so tell me about this ensign you're dating, and are things going well? Tell me about it.
Yeah.
So you've got that. Obviously, the Bajoran ends up being kind of the more prominent one of the 4 because she gets the most development, she gets the biggest scenes, and it's because obviously plot-wise she's going to have the biggest role to play in what's going on the ship, and it does lead to kind of... There's definitely a moment, maybe about 10 minutes before the end, when they're kind of revealing what's going to happen, what she's been asked to do, where I kind of went, this is going to have a downer ending where she dies, doesn't it? Like I had that sneaking suspicion where I'm like, I think this will work if she comes back and everyone's worried for a minute and it ends up being fine. But this might land really well if she doesn't make it back. And I was glad they went with that because I think it worked really well.
It did. It definitely made it feel like it was, like a solid gut punch at the end. But like it had a point. Not everyone got the happy ending.
Yeah. And I think what I like about it is I think the premise of this episode, especially before we started watching it and we just knew what the basic gist of it was, it sounded like, oh, it's going to be more comedic. And I don't think it actually is that. I mean, there's a little bit of funniness, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's none.
Yeah, there's comedy, but just the interactions between the groups of friends, basically.
Yeah, I think, like, maybe this is my taste coming into play here, but I think the first thought I had when I read the premise is I was thinking of the Zeppo, which of course is an episode of the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where all this crazy apocalyptic stuff's going on in the background, where we follow Xander and his antics, and it's a pure comic relief episode by and by. This doesn't do that. This actually kind of takes these younger characters and sort of shows what they're really going through And it is kind of lighthearted to an extent, but when it elevates as it goes through the episode and we realize, oh, one of them's going to be asked to go on a very dangerous mission, I think that worked really well. And I think one of the things that worked in terms of like that didn't feel like it came out of nowhere either. They very wisely built up to it by showing the teases of what was going on, because so early on in the episode, like part of what the Enterprise does is there's like an escape pod in Cardassian space that's been like has to be rescued, and they do a whole thing where they get a tractor beam out and they pull it in, and it's like fine. And this is where some of them start getting like little bits of their own like missions where they don't really understand the full picture. But we see that the person that's been rescued and is being treated by Crusher and Medbay, and she even asks her ensign to leave, is a Cardassian, because it's all top secret and all the rest of it. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. And of course, it's like, well, one of the main ensigns we're following in this episode is a Bajoran. Like, she's going to react to that in some way. We don't have a full context of what the purpose of it is yet. But even that alone is enough to go, oh, she's going to have an opinion and care about this in some manner. And that kind of like plants a seed of like, what is she going to do when she finds out? So that's kind of like there from the get-go. And then of course you've got the bit with the Vulcan where he's like basically realizing that Geordi's not doing like a safety test on a shuttle. He's making him look like it's been attacked and like it's ran away from like a firefight of some kind, like it's been escaping. And he sort of deduces that. So all these little hints,
just from like, again, from their own expertise as well. Like,
yes,
the Vulcans figuring it out, because it's like, well, that only makes sense in this scenario, so that must be what it's for.
Yeah, and I think all these little things, as the episode goes on, does a good job of planting the seeds that it is going to get a little bit more serious. So it doesn't feel like it just comes out of nowhere when we get to that stage, you know? Like it feels like everything is actually bubbling up until we get this more serious part of the episode.
It is. I really like the way that they're all kind of brought into it, and not just like, they're not just been like told this is what's going on. They have to like figure it out. It's kind of almost part of the test of getting promoted is this mission, like unofficially. Which is why I really like the Riker's one. The one he doesn't really like, he doesn't care for, is completely out of the loop on this mission, because he's not deemed worthy enough almost to be involved.
And it's also just because he doesn't have any particular like reason to be, you know, like because his job is basically he's piloting the ship, and the promotion is to be in the other chair that Data usually sits in, whatever the role is, I can't remember. But yeah, you know, like everyone else like is involved in some way for a reason. The Vulcan, because he's helping Geordi with the various things and setting up this like rouge that they're doing. And then you've got the medical ensigns, like obviously she's kind of around in med bay and sees some things at various points, and that kind of like fills her in things. Some of it's just kind of natural because of their position on the ship. They see certain parts of the whole plan that we don't get a full idea of until later.
It is, which is why I'm saying it's not like, oh, this is an official test, but I just like thematically how it links up with how he's the only one who is not really like appreciated by his senior officer, and is the one that ends up left out of the loop by its nature. Not because of that, but it's like almost an indirect consequence. He's not trusted enough to be brought in, even though later, yes, there's no reason because there's no like skill set. But again, it's just he's not trusted enough to be like, oh well, maybe you know, there's no role for him to find.
Yeah, it's also just the playing with this idea of like in the structure of Starfleet and military in general, is that when you're lower down the ranks and you get given an order, you don't know the context of that order or why you're doing the thing. You just have to accept that you're doing it, and that's what you've been told to do. And they all kind of live through most of the episode in the dark, and it's only because they get small snippets each, well, some of them do anyway, where they're able to kind of maybe figure out what's going on by the end. And even the one who doesn't know, like once he hears enough about like what they're looking for at the very end, or we're looking for life signs, and he's like, oh, sir, it'd help if I knew what type of life signs I was looking for. And Riker says, you're looking for Bajoran life signs. And he has this little moment where his face kind of drops, and he's like, oh no, is that my friend that we're looking for? And he gets very worried. So it's like just all these little snippets. And I think this idea of like, we're so used to being in the loop and everyone is in the know out of all the characters we follow, because they're all in the upper staff. They all go to the observation deck, they all sit around and they talk about what the situation is, the crisis, what the problem is, and we have to solve it, and they offer suggestions. They're all in the loop. And this was an episode where we follow half the characters who are not in the loop and how frustrated they are that they don't know what's going on, especially when we get to the point where one of their friends and colleagues is the one that's in jeopardy. And maybe the best scene that kind of explores this is the sort of the poker scene where it's cutting between the two poker games and the young ensigns are playing poker, and it's showing you how similar some of them are to particularly Riker and the one he doesn't like. They're like paralleling almost identically. It's just that Riker's more confident and is able to bluff, whereas, well, he's not even bluffing, he's got a good hand, but, the younger Riker, he tries to bluff and he fails miserably. So, it's...
Does not have the charisma to pull it off.
Not yet.
No.
Not yet.
Let's throw the beard first.
It's actually, you know what, one of the best episodes we've had this season was that episode that kind of brought back Riker's old commanding officer and showed, like, what he was like when he was younger. He didn't have the confidence to, like... he did
his decisions.
Yeah, exactly. So he kind of stuck with his captain even when he maybe should have questioned his orders. I think it's very interesting to get that episode just quite close to this one, where we're seeing a young officer.
3 ago, right? Yeah,
it was like 3 or 4 episodes ago. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting... I mean, I don't know if that was intentional, probably not, but it is actually really nice that that's still fresh in my head.
Worked out nicely, yeah.
Yeah. So that's really good. So the big thing of the episode, though, is that at a certain point, Picard says to our Bajoran ensign, hey, come see me. And they go to his office, they sit down. And he basically brings up, oh, you're up for this promotion, and I don't think you should get it. And he basically explains that in Starfleet Academy, you did something stupid, and another cadet died because of it. And you then lied about it, right? Everyone pretended it was an accident, and you got severely into trouble for it. And honestly, as far as I'm concerned, you should have been expelled. And I really don't think you have got any place being in Starfleet. And just chews her out. It's a completely like damning scene for her. She's obviously really heartbroken by it, and leaves the scene. And she's kind of down about it. And one of the things that's interesting is that because she's the one that works under Worf throughout the episode, and we've seen a couple of scenes where Worf says, oh no, I think she's a good fit for this, I nominated you for this promotion, even though it's not actually like, you expected to rise up in security, but you're actually shifting over to this other role. I recommended you for that because I think you're suitable for it. There's a great scene where he is doing one of his classes where he's training the ensigns how to fight, and he pulls her aside at the end, and they're all in their kind of like space karate suits, and he's like, hey, I think you're ready for advanced lessons, but I have to do a test first to make sure you're okay for it. And she's like, okay, can I study? And he's like, no. Part of the test is that you no studying. You have to do it, like, you have to test you right away. And he puts a blindfold on her and he gives it a name, right? Which later turns out to be bullshit. The name, he's made this up. But the whole point of it is that he is going to attack her while she's blindfolded and keeps telling her to defend herself. And after about 3 times of being thrown to the ground and like failing miserably, she gets up in protest and says, no, sir, we're not doing that again. This is an unfair test. I cannot possibly see how this is actually accomplishing anything. This is nonsense. And then Worf goes, you passed. Maybe next time you won't take as many bruises before you fight an unfair test. And what I love about this is that you realize what Worf's doing here. He's realized, or maybe he just knows what Picard's done. Either way, he's giving her the lesson she needs right now. He's looking out for, as her mentor and superior officer, he's giving her the exact lesson she needs to build up the courage to go back to Picard and tell him to go F himself. And I'm being hyperbolic by phrasing.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what she does. She goes to Picard and she's like, sir, look, I did something wrong in my past. That is absolutely true. I can't really change that. But I can work hard, and I have done nothing but exemplary performance since I've been on this ship. That's why I should be judged on. And that's why I should be considered for promotion, and it's why I should be in Starfleet. And she stands her ground, and then Picard basically reveals, you know what, that took a lot of courage, and that's what I wanted to check. Because you're going to need a lot of courage for what we're about to ask you to do.
Picard is such a dick sometimes.
Yes. I do like, though, that at the end of the scene, he did sort of like turn around and say, hey, the reason why you made it to this ship is because I asked for you. Because I knew you needed a chance at redemption, and I didn't think other captains would give you that chance. And I'm like, oh, of course Picard's the good guy. Like, the whole time he felt like a bit of a dick, but I was like, of course he's the good guy who wanted to give her the chance.
And it's not too dissimilar to what happened with Riker.
That is true, yeah. Again, tying back into that episode that we just had about him. where he had a bit of a shady report because of what happened with that other captain. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, admittedly, Riker had already kind of risen up a bit before he got to Picard, but yeah, there's definitely some parallels there.
Yeah, but the point is still Picard. He knows that about Riker now, and in general, it's something he looks out for clearly.
Yeah, he sees the value in someone who has something to redeem for, Yeah. But anyway,
I like that he doesn't just blindly just go, oh well, obviously they're going to be fired. He waits and tests them. It doesn't just throw them up and go, oh, they'll be fine. They'll redeem themselves. She actually does have to earn it still.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So she goes to the meeting that he invites her to, and this Cardassian's now awake. He's sitting there, and she, of course, is taken aback by seeing him. And very quickly, Picard's like, oh yeah, this is a Cardassian agent who's working for the Federation. He basically risked his life to get out into our sector so that he could give us information that will help with not only the defense of Bajor, but anything that the Cardassians might be planning to attack. He's given us valuable intel. But we have to get him back to Cardassian space in a way that's not suspicious. So he needs to have a Bajoran prisoner, and basically gives her this mission and says, you have to be his prisoner. It'll look this way, and then once he's back safely across the border and everything's checked out, he'll send you in a pod back over to us and we'll pick you up. And makes it very clear as well that he cannot order her to do this because this is a dangerous mission. And she is still just an ensign. He's like, I can't say you have to do this. And she immediately volunteers. Immediately says, I want to do it. I'm volunteering. It makes no not even humming or hawing, no considerations. I'm going to do it. So we set up for that, and she gets into her civvies. Crusher puts her in some, I was going to say makeup, but I think she might even it may be more science fiction-y than that. I think she might have actually altered her face with with her doohickeys to make her look all bruised and beaten up.
Just give her a few cuts and bruises and then half heal it. That'll do the job. Might be a bit painful, but it'll work.
You think that's how she did this, do you? You think
lots of painkillers.
And we even get a scene where she's on the shuttle with the Cardassian and asks why why did you do this? Like, why? And he basically explains that he's done with war and that he wants peace, and that the Cardassians just keep looking for more conflict. There's something to that effect. And it's like, okay, so she kind of, and I think that's specifically there so that we never really question after the fact that maybe he betrayed her, because I don't think you get that impression. I think it is just, no, something went wrong when she was being sent back, and the Cardassians caught this pod and said, oh, we need to shoot that down, and that's what's happened.
Yeah, again, I don't at all think that he did betray her. I think he released her in the pod. Someone on the Cardassian ship noticed the pod being released. They saw on the sensor. They went, hang on, there's a life sign in that. She's trying to escape. She's got out somehow. Just, shoot her down.
Yeah, so
that's my assumption anyway.
Yeah, we get this kind of somber moment where we realize, oh, the pod's late. And this is where the ensigns all start talking about, where is she? What happened? And why are we next to Cardassian space? What's going on? And this is where he gets frustrated that he doesn't know, and the other two seem to have pieced things together, because the Vulcan's oh shit, me making that shuttle look it was damaged may have something to do with this. And then the medical officer's yeah, I've got a funny feeling that Cardassian may have something to do with this. And where's her friend? She's gone. What's going on? And then obviously you get the scene where they're looking for her, they're sending out a probe to try and find her, and he finds out they're looking for a Bajoran. And once they get the information, and we don't even hear them get the information, we just hear it come from Picard, where Picard has a report, he sits down and he puts out an announcement to the ship and says, it's my unfortunate duty to tell you that one of your fellow officers has been lost in duty, names her, and kind of, it's all very solid. And I actually found myself feeling this more than I think I was expecting to, where I think they did a really good job of making her seem like a really dedicated officer. I think the weird thing about that whole proving herself to Picard by building up that courage, I think it made me like her more as well, where it made her feel like more of a real fleshed out character, so that it actually hit quite hard when she died here, or we found out she died at the end.
I agree. I think it's no accident that she's the one that has that that moment where she has to rise up, because they all have their moments with the other officers. And obviously she has the stuff with Worf, but which is all good, solid stuff, but I don't think fundamentally it's any more than any others get with their officers.
Yeah.
But she has the extra stuff by dealing with Picard. So she has like the most depth out of the newer characters just because of that.
Yeah, and I think also showing Worf, because the final moments we end on is Worf is also upset that he's lost her, right? Because this is someone he was training, someone he clearly had grown friends with, even though he's maybe not ready to admit that.
Worf probably thought the most of his trainee than all the others. Like, Crusher obviously thinks a lot of us, but it's quite a friendly relationship. Geordi respects his, but it's a little bit confrontational still, because there's a little bit of that challenge there. Riker doesn't think so much of his for most of the episode. Whereas Worf's like, no, you're excellent. You're not even just doing this. I'm promoting you beyond that. Like you're better at that. You're way too good for this.
Yeah, and the end of the episode is like her friends are sitting commiserating, and like the guy Sam, he's like he got his promotion, and he's upset because he's like did I only get it because she's dead? And even if that's not the case, like how can I be happy about it? And it's actually the medical officer who like picks up the pip and starts putting it onto his collar and like no, like you look good, like here you're promoted. She'd want this for you, blah blah blah. And it's the bartender character who goes up to Worf and says, "Hey, I need to do something with this table. There's a free chair next to those three," and he's like basically matchmaking to make Worf go over and sit with them. And Worf's like, "Oh no, like that's our friends. I don't belong with them." And he's like, "She considered you a friend. Go and commit." And I think one of the things about this episode that was really emphasized throughout, mostly in jokey ways, but made a good point all the same, of saying how there is this kind of natural divide between the upper officers and the younger generation who are working their way up, and there's just a natural break between them. And I think this was the bartender who has been going between them, and that was like a point that was made, is that he can talk to any of them quite freely. He calls Riker by his first name. That's like a point they make earlier on. Him being over there and saying, "No, go sit with them. This is a time for you to like bond with them." Because I mean, if nothing else, this might be the first time all these ensigns have all lost someone in the line of duty, right? This might be their first experience of losing a fellow officer and having to deal with that and not knowing how to process it. And this is something where Worf can go over and give them some experience and comfort and make them feel like they're more a part of the crew than they ever have before, because one of the officers is stepping down and saying, "Hey, we're all going through this together," or whatever, however you want to look at it. But I found both the Picard announcement and like Worf going over to sit with them, and then not even a single word of dialogue being uttered. It just fades out to the side of the ship and end the episode. I thought both of those scenes were quite affecting in a way that I was not expecting that level of emotional impact when this episode started. And it didn't even feel manipulative, because it felt like her as a character didn't feel like they tried to play it up where like she was definitely going to die beforehand, even though I kind of thought she might. It was done in this very kind of confident way where it just, no, this happened, this is the sort of thing that happens on this type of ship, and now the characters have to deal with it. And it was enough restraint where they didn't try and go into the melodrama, where it actually almost felt like it hit harder because they didn't try and intentionally do tearjerker stuff. It was just, no, we're sticking to it.
There was probably a real temptation at the script to have this like 5 minutes earlier and have to have her die a few minutes earlier and have 5 minutes of them all at the end sharing stories more, being a bit sappier, so to speak. And obviously there's a little bit of that. There's just enough of that. But I think that there's a real danger that you could have easily overdone it here.
Absolutely. If anything, like, I don't know, maybe one small moment that would have been nice, maybe to wrap up the Riker and Sam stuff, would have been when the announcement came through, if Riker was like standing behind him, like have Riker maybe put his hand on his shoulder or something, as kind of like a, I don't know, like, like any barriers that were there before, like, you just heard horrible news about your friend, and like, I'm here for you as an officer, kind of thing. I don't know, just like something little like that. Maybe it would have been like the one tiny thing I would have added, just to kind of like tie their, like rivalry in a bow. But it's a minor suggestion. It's not
I get
much.
that. I think instead, I kind of like what it does here, where it's just Worf is the ambassador from the senior officers. So it's just like it's not the whole structure collapsing at once. It's just okay. There's a little bit of a mix. There's just one link there for now.
And it makes sense that it's him because he's the one that was closest to her out of all the higher ups. It makes sense. And I think that's the other thing about her death is that works really well is that because it goes out of its way to say she had something to redeem for, and she has to argue why she needs a chance to redeem it. Obviously, she has redeemed it. Like she gave her life to succeed in a mission here for Starfleet, but it does make the death feel like a bit more sad. Like it's not just like, oh, she was, this dedicated officer who went out and did this, but this idea that she, in theory, maybe thought, oh, I'm going to spend my life redeeming that mistake by like a good career in Starfleet, and she goes out when she's an ensign, it being cut short. I don't know. There's enough kind of like bittersweet qualities to it that make it feel a bit more, I guess, nuanced. I think that's what's impressed me most about this episode is that it doesn't just feel like a typical like sappy TV death. It feels a bit more just, I don't know. Again, restrained's the word I keep coming back to. It just feels restrained in how they handled it, and it just feels like it has a bit more impact because of it. So
yeah, I agree with that. I think it's pretty good episode. Yeah,
I think it's fair. I think we were doing our top 5 at the end of the season. I think this is going to be fighting for a spot on there quite happily.
I suspect it will. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that season 7's had admittedly, last episode was a complete train wreck, but like it's been pretty mediocre on average. But there's definitely been like a handful of episodes that I think because I was expecting a really bad season, the handful of episodes that have been pretty damn good have been very pleasant surprises.
Yeah, I think obviously we're not finished the season yet, but on the whole, I don't think it's been quite as bad as I feared it would be going in. Like, don't get me wrong, there have been some terrible episodes, but it hasn't been every episode has been terrible. There's been a lot of mediocre, but
hey, if we only get like one more good episode before the end of the season, I think this season's been overall fine.
Are you including the final episode, which we know by reputation is meant to be good?
I'll say no. I'll say if we get one more good single episode and then a good finale, I think I'll be fairly happy with the final season of the show.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's expectations, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, the expectations were low. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so I will also be happy with that based on that. But if I'd gone into if we'd gone into this blind off season 6, like pretend it was airing now, and we'd know, that no one had these reactions before us. We didn't have that to color us.
Mm-hmm.
We'd be disappointed.
Yeah. I'm trying to think though, like, did season 6 really have a better hit rate? I'd have to like compare the episode list side by side.
I don't think it had anywhere near as many lows though.
That's fair. I'm trying to think of it as it had the highs though that a couple of the episodes have had in this season.
I'd have to have a look through the episodes to be sure.
I'm not sure if it did. So I don't know. An interesting point of comparison maybe when we're done. But no, I really like this episode. I like the premise. I was enjoying it early on, but when all the elements started to come together and it gave us the ending that it did, that was a bit more tragic, I thought, you know what, that hit me a bit more than I thought it was going to. And it's really nice that between this, not the last TNG, of course, because that was terrible, but this and the last Deep Space Nine we did, both had really good endings. So we're riding high on Star Trek at the moment, so maybe it'll come crashing down, but things are looking good. So we'll be back to Deep Space Nine next review, but when we come back to TNG, we'll be looking at episode 16, which is called Thine Own Self. Here's a description on IMDb. Data. Actually, yeah, Data wasn't in this. There was no Data at all. This was a dataless episode.
To have a data-full episode next time.
Apparently we will. Anyway. Here's a description on IMDb. Data is sent to follow a probe that has drifted off course and crashed on a primitive planet, only to crash on the planet himself, with no memory of any event prior to crashing on the planet's surface. Data's got amnesia.
Great.
Also, those hats, the silly hats, going by the what was
Sold.
That's it on the IMDb page.
It'll
Anyway,
feel just like original series.
yeah, maybe it will. All right, well, join us for Data Amnesia in a couple of weeks' time. We'll have Deep Space Nine next, though. So let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Helps out a bunch when you do. And of course, you can support the channel and all the content both here and over on the movie channel, MailFuzz Movies, over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Or you can support via YouTube membership as well, of course. Any support is greatly appreciated. So thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Keep watching Star Trek, and somewhere out there, why couldn't it have been Wesley Crusher?